Hello and welcome to the GMCCI Advocacy Podcast. Meet the candidates. My name is Tony Loconsole with Muscatine Power and Water. Really excited to be here, and we're talking with Lindsey Phillips, who is a current Muscatine Community School District Board of Education member. It's good to see you.
You too.
We're going to start with just an introduction of yourself, and then we've got some questions that we'll move through. So whenever you're ready.
Sure. So as Tony said, I'm Lindsey Phillips, currently serving on the Muscatine Community School Board, running or hoping for my second term. I do get to sit in the president's seat right now, which is completely different, actually, when you're sitting at the board table. I think it just feels a little different. So the role's a little bit more facilitating and listening, and sometimes that's a little difficult for me because I want to ask all the questions right away. But personally, I am a mom of two boys. My husband and I have lived in Muscatine pretty much our entire lives, raising our family here and in the district. And so it's just very important to us, and just being part of the community and engaged at whatever level we can be.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Each of the candidates that you'll be seeing in this series had received the questions ahead of time, and we're going to facilitate a good discussion, and we thank everybody for watching. So we'll start with our first question. Lindsey, what do you see as the most critical challenge facing Muscatine schools, and how would you address it?
Yeah. So depending on the day, my answer to all of these questions could change. I know that's not what you're supposed to say, but I do think that that's true because there are a lot of moving parts in our district, and especially a district of our size. We're not the largest district, but we're not really a small district, right? So it's very complex on what we can be facing. Obviously, too, a lot of decision making is not done at a local level, and so sometimes we're just reacting, and you have to. So we are currently, I was just looking at some of our staffing demographics the other day, and I think one of the challenges that we'll have coming up is a majority of our classroom teachers are aged 51 to 59 years old. So in the next few years, they're going to be seeking retirement options, and we'll need to replenish those jobs and get those classrooms full for students. Additionally, we have declining enrollment like every district across the state and probably the country. So that's something then that directly affects our funding and what we can offer. Those are going to be things we're going to have to continuously be looking at and monitoring.
Yeah. That's an interesting stat. I didn't know that about the age of the teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. There's a lot of stats out there, but I hadn't heard that one.
Don't double check all of them, but
Our second question, how will you ensure that all students, regardless of background, have access to a quality education?
Yeah, there are a lot of things the district is doing right now that I'm really proud of for this. And when we think of every student, I don't know how you can even be inclusive enough in that statement, right? Because there are so many different needs. So we've got individuals receiving special education services. We have individuals that maybe need accelerated learning or just need a different path or avenue because traditional day-to-day is not working. And that's like the smallest number of students that we're even talking about, right? There's still so many differences in needs of kids, which is the greatest thing about public education. We get to try to find a way to address and include all of them. And whether or not it's required, I don't think is what necessarily ties you to it, but there really is something for everyone in our district. And we've seen that through alternative programmings with our MCAP. We've seen it through JROTC, which is a new program that's just come to Muscatine. They're kicking off their first year. It gives them alternatives. And then our district is just open to learning what we need to do better. So as far as special education, IEPs, 504s, we completed an audit with the AEA recently and continue to have a really good partnership with them. And so that will continuously let us know what we need to improve and maybe where we're missing the mark. We do know that we've had some issues, and I keep saying we, and I know I'm not supposed to do that, but that's what happens when I'm currently on the board.
No judgment
Sorry.
here. I'm just asking questions, so you're totally fine.
Okay. Well, so we do have some of those performance measures too that let us know where we need to improve and where we're kind of a work in progress, and we are showing improvement in all of those areas. So we're addressing things. We can always do better, and tomorrow there will be a new challenge that we have to address, but I think we're equipped to at least tackle it a little bit.
So we touched on staff a little bit. Our next question, what is your approach when it comes to supporting teachers and staff in the district?
Yeah, the board role in this is a little different, I think, but we definitely need to listen first. And I think try to understand. My gut reaction anytime there's a concern or something needs addressed is to be like, okay, what's the solution? Let's fix it. And I know that's not always a long-term solution, and it also doesn't always relate back to my role as a board member. So pausing a minute to see what policies do we have in place that could be aiding or impeding this current situation, and whether it be staffing numbers, whether it be a concern in the district, or maybe there's something really great and we want to continue to build on that. So what policies do we have in place? And then are we able to adhere to those policies and implement them? Do we have the right resources? I think those are the questions to ask as a board member, and not always just go be the fixer, which is difficult sometimes.
Especially when you care, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's an overarching theme for anyone that is seeking any type of, office. They have to care, be passionate, committed, all those things. So I get that. How would you promote transparency and community engagement when it comes to school board decisions?
Yes. So I will preface this a little bit by saying the first time I ran for school board, I don't think I understood the difference between policies and procedures at the board table. So I've been on boards, I've been familiar with those processes, but a lot of procedural work was also done at the board table in those roles. That's not necessarily the case in the school district. So we have great admin teams that put together all of those procedures and regulations and things like that. And so I had to get used to that not being my job, and knowing, I guess, how to interpret or how to write policy too, so that it really shifted us back to those procedures and made sure that they were really clear. So I think for parents and teachers and any staff member, honestly, just getting familiar with what those procedures look like. And then if there is a concern or if something's not working,
No.
but having those
Yeah,
conversations too, where we can move together proactively.
sure.
And then sometimes it really is just trying to find out who do we ask the questions to,
Hmm.
and what's the right path to
Yeah.
make sure that we get a solution. Community school board conversations,
Mm.
that has been something that's new. I wish that they were so much better attended though. So if anyone's not doing anything or would like to just come and listen and talk before every general school board meeting, there is that community opportunity to ask all of the questions. If there's something you're not hearing and you
Mhm.
want to, I think transparency is super important, and it's
Mhm.
always something we need to do better at, because we don't know what people want to know.
Sure. So we're at the halfway point. Question number 5 for Lindsey Phillips, candidate for school board, is what role should the school board play in shaping curriculum and educational priorities?
Yes. So we've gotten to be part of a couple curriculum adoptions. And so there is a pretty good process in place. And I think what's important is that they're utilizing that same process so that they're engaging all of the different voices equally across all of the curriculums. The board, I feel like, should be asking questions too of those review processes, like what are teachers recommending? What does it look like when it's piloted in a classroom? And then really looking at those survey results too. So students are asked which ones they would prefer, teachers are asked which ones they would prefer. But of course, if we have a curriculum that's not engaging, then it could be the greatest material ever, but maybe not effective. So looking at those responses, asking the questions about what it looks like. And then one of the questions that I always think about right away too is, as they progress, they were looking at an elementary curriculum. Did that math curriculum set them up for the math standards that they're going to need to adhere to or learn in middle school,
Sure.
or
Yeah.
more secondary education? So looking at those questions and trying to find out how do they all align, to make sure that we're not seeing those gaps. Always this weird shift between fifth and sixth grade.
Mm.
And then, because sixth grade is kind of on the middle school curriculums and all of the textbooks and the packages that you get given to you, grading scales are different, how they flow, it's different. But our sixth graders are in elementary. And so how does it look from that fifth to sixth grade gap? And making sure that it's seamless and that they've developed the correct skills ahead of time too. Additionally, as we were doing ELA, we were talking about math curriculums too, and when they're learning to read, does it also set them up for that current grade level like story problem?
Okay.
Or are we not understanding the math story problems because we haven't really gotten there in ELA? So just looking at those skills and how it all talks to each other, it's a really big job. So ultimately asking the questions and taking the recommendations, that's a beast. I don't know how you make those decisions all the time because they have big effects and ultimately you're shaping them to not just be successful as adults, but really next year and how it affects everything.
Yeah. And anytime we talk about math, I start to get real nervous because I was not good at math. And I would say as a 42-year-old, I'm still not great at math. But thankfully, my kids got their math smarts from their mom. So shout out to my wife, Casey. Our sixth question for you, Lindsey, is how do you plan to collaborate with fellow board members, administrators, and families? You've touched on a little bit with the admin piece, but how would you speak to that when it comes to those at the table with you and then families in the community?
Yeah. So families in the community, I'll just start with that one. We talked about it a little bit ago with how we bring their voice to the board table or whether or not there's transparency and those kinds of things. And I think just having that at the forefront. And so when sitting at the board table too, I'm the first one that's like, okay, wait, what's that acronym mean? Because nobody
There's too many acronyms, just in the world in general.
And I
right?
find myself lost,
Sure.
right? Like a lot, and just being like, okay, I have to think like, what hat are we wearing? What could that possibly be? And if you're listening at home or you're trying to understand a policy and we've all read it and asked the questions and then we don't talk about any of that or repeat ourselves, then we're not being very engaging. And so slowing down those board conversations and learning what can we do? Like the board table is supposed to be a place of business and that's where we're conducting like our actual meetings. So what other people do in a boardroom very open and with conversation, there's not opportunity for that really. And so I think continuously learning, when can I just pause something and be like, I have a question or explain this to me or how does this work? And it's a little intimidating to do that.
Sure.
I mean, still I've been fortunate enough to get to do it for almost 4 years now. And so I don't know that ever goes away, that you have to be continuously learning and asking those questions and deciding how can we make this meeting make sense to anyone that's watching. And at the board table with other board members, I think it was drilled into me the first year that there is not just one board member. Like you are always a whole. No one can make a decision on their own, right? Like that is something that you're reminded of often. And so I think sometimes on the outside, it can almost look like you're going through these motions and you all just agree on everything. And I don't think that's true. And I don't want that to be true. I think some healthy discussion where we ask the hard questions or we challenge somebody else's thoughts or we say, well, why do you think that? Who have you talked to? I think that needs to happen not in a conflict way, but when we don't always come in with the same ideas or experiences, it allows for us to have a more robust conversation. And we're still missing that a little bit. And sometimes that just happens when you've all kind of just sat around the table for a while, or you just tend to like know maybe what someone else is thinking. But just continuing to challenge things a little bit, ask the questions to better understand. We'll keep working on that, or I'll keep working on that because I know.
Like lifelong learner, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And all of the senses of that little phrase.
Yes.
What is your vision for improving school facilities and learning environments when you think about things across the Muscatine Community School District?
Yeah, I read this question to someone yesterday because I was like, gosh, what do we do next? What do I
Did they
want
have
to
an answer?
see?
I'm
No.
just kidding. Yeah, that's good though.
Well, depending on where your
Yeah.
kid goes to school, maybe you have lots of answers
Sure.
because we're an aging community too. And so, I know my kids were at McKinley and we saw this great addition or expansion happen and it was so needed. And I see how those kids utilize the space and the pride they have in their building when they walk in there. I think it makes teachers want to come to work, support staff feel like they have the infrastructure in place to do their jobs better, right? There's just a lot of great things when stuff like that can be done. And then my student moved to Mulberry and he's like, our gym is so small. We love small gyms too. But I think that it is different to walk into another building that
Sure.
maybe hasn't had those upgrades or is landlocked a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
As I've asked questions about facility improvements, I've learned a lot of things about like air conditioners on roofs and what structure needs to be in place to even
Sure.
accommodate those. And there's just never an easy answer. But the district is currently in a bond project until I believe 2029. And so then some of those other larger projects, I'm not saying Mulberry is getting a new gym. That's just my
Don't
saying.
quote her on
Do
that,
not
folks.
quote me on that.
Yeah.
Probably not. But if we have some of those needs that then come back, there could be an opportunity, I think, for the district to look at what needs are there now. Like every board or organization, when you get studies done and have consultants come in all the time and tell you what you need, right? Our list is like this long, and we've done like this much. So
Sure.
there's always something that can be done, but I do think the investment is there. I think the community is invested in our kids from elementary to high school level. I think they want to make sure that they have everything in place, from sports to arts to academics.
Yeah.
We've had some good improvements, and I'm excited for my kids to get to high school,
Mm.
be in the science wing, and like all of the things. We've
Yeah.
done a good job. There's
Science
more.
wing is impressive.
So impressive.
Yeah.
You feel like you're walking onto a campus,
Yeah.
and like your learning is just next level.
Yeah, it really does look good. We have 3 questions left, if you can believe
Okay.
it. Once again,
So
you're
stay
watching.
to the point.
We're watching the GMCCI Advocacy Podcast. Tony Tone, Loconsole with MPW. This is Lindsey Phillips, candidate for Muscatine Community School District Board of Education. How would you approach budgeting and financial oversight for the district? A lot in that question.
Yes.
In school financing, I can't even imagine or explain how to process it. But it is a lot, and there's a lot to it, right?
Yes, there is a lot to it. And I think the conversation looks different every time, whether we're trying to understand it from a property tax standpoint, where does the money go and where does it fund, and why are you putting up a new building but you're reducing staff. So lots of questions in that. I have the same questions, and we seek the same answers. And it's something that we're continuously learning to understand. I've had the opportunity to go to some school board conferences already. And I'm so glad that these weren't the questions that I got my first time running, because I would not have the answer. And I don't know if I do now, but understanding what do those different pots of money look like, what can they fund, and then how much can they fund too, because there's limits on everything, and the difference between spending limits and reserves, and where can we move money, all of the questions that you really hope you have a great finance guy and you can ask him to explain it all to you. Also utilizing resources like the Iowa School Board website. So that would be my advice to anybody too that's trying to understand it. They have great maps that will put the flow of money together. Where does it come from? What pot does it go into? And then how can it be used? And I still reference that all the time because like you said, it's just really difficult to know. And so some of the decisions we make, one of the questions that I try to ask myself is, where does this money come from? How is it funded? If it's funded through a general pot and it's on education and salaries, is there something else that flows in there, like at-risk dollars, that could help to alleviate some of that, or all of those questions? So depending on what the concern is or what decision needs to be made, I think asking the question first and foremost is, how is it funded? And then, are there creative ways to get things funded?
Yeah.
If we need to.
Sure.
And just really trying to understand what it means before you can even move to step 2.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that those diagrams that do exist for folks that are watching this. You should check it out. It'll help, especially if you're a visual learner like someone like myself.
Yes.
Really breaks it down nicely. What is your stance on student mental health and wellness initiatives in the district, or things that maybe you would like to see happen in the district?
Yes. So the district, I know, has some great partnerships right now with Robert Young Center. We also have some community groups like Michaela's Hope that goes into the district and works with students to talk about mental health, self-awareness, belonging, all of the things that funnel into really just being mentally well. And so we do have approaches. I think as a district sometimes too, that I am err on the side of caution kind of person when it comes to any kind of mental health interventions. I think we need to seek our professionals and just make sure that we're really careful. I do have some personal experiences, I would say too, that every student that we come into contact with has a different story, and how they respond to really tough topics or exposure to things. I always want us to have in the back of our mind that we could be causing some trauma through exposure. And so when we're talking with our littlest, that looks very different than when we're talking with some of our high school students. And so I can't even answer this question just sitting here because I'm not going to do it any justice, because I think that it's very vast, and that it can be answered in a lot of ways because it can mean so many different things.
Sure.
So I think seeking out those professional partnerships that we have is something that needs to be continued, and I would advocate for that. I would advocate very strongly for transparency with parents too, because some of these things can't just happen in a classroom and then sit. We have to be prepared to then have further discussions at home and healthy discussions at home. And so how can we do that and support that? So
That's good. All right, last question.
okay.
We made it. We made it. So how will you, Lindsey, how would you evaluate the effectiveness of your service on the board?
So when I first ran, I'll just go back to that because everyone wants to know, why are you running for school board? When I first ran for school board, we had 2 policies really that address behaviors in the school district. And I don't just mean like behavior somebody was naughty in class today, right? But I just mean in general, what are the behavioral expectations? And those were on the school bus and if you were in activities. And that was really the only place we had things written at a consistent and policy level. And so when I ran, I really wanted your experience to be in every building, no matter what building you walked into. Do you have the same expectation for you to have the greatest day and for those around you to have the greatest day, right? And I know that looks different for every student, but how we help somebody achieve the same expectation, I think, is completely doable, and we have the ability to do that in our district. And so that was kind of the first thing that I'm like, what do we have in place? What are we doing to give teachers to a little support and saying, this is the rule, this is what I have to do, and I feel backed by my administration if I make this decision today. Or I feel armed and equipped to say, here's what I think is best for this child, right? So that conversation, I'm sure it was already happening. I don't know if I had anything to do with it, but it really started to take off, and we were able to ask some of those tough questions and think, what does this actually look like in a school day? The MTSS tiered approach has been happening, and it talks about academics, it talks about behaviors, relationships, everything. And it just approaches those concerns, I think. And I don't know, I was really pleased, and I just felt good about who's helping us take care of our kids, and that we all really do want the same things. And it's just, how do we get there? So very proud of that. I think that I would say we need to continue to do those kinds of things. And so that when we look at survey results or we talk to somebody and we say, what's your experience like in school? That they say, for me, it's great. Or, this helps me. And it doesn't have to be the same experience, because that's not how we get to the same conclusion, right? So I think if somebody can just be like, I had a great experience and I really felt like I knew what was expected of me, I was able to achieve it, and they feel successful, even if I had nothing to do with that, I'm probably going to swell a little bit and be like, yes, that's great.
Well, that's good. Listen, I appreciate your time. We got through all of our questions. And I would say, once again, this is an opportunity for you, the viewer, to get to know folks like Lindsey Phillips, and then feel good when you head to the polls. And I cannot stress enough how important it is to vote in local elections. Just vote anytime you get a chance to vote. Vote. And I've done that personally, not to make this about myself. As I said, I'm 42. I've voted in every election that I could since I was legally able to. And it feels good. I like to vote in person. I go to my polling place. So
we have stickers now.
Yeah, I listen. I feel like I advocated for stickers for a while.
I know,
and we got them. I encourage everyone to vote and be as informed as you can, and that's what we're trying to do here. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for doing this.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your service. Thanks for the attempt to continue doing so. That is not something that everybody does, but it's something that I admire in all people that are currently serving or seeking office, because you are stepping sometimes out of your comfort zone, and it's just not an easy thing to do. So thank you.
Correct.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for watching. This has been the GMCCI Advocacy Podcast, Meet the Candidates. We'll be back. Stay tuned for another candidate coming through, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.